Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Monday, January 21st, 2019. It is Tu B'Shvat, a beautiful holiday that Jews celebrate here in Israel and around the world, especially significant here in Israel. It is the New Year for trees. Some call it Arbor Day for the Jewish faith. What it really is the celebration of the connection of the nation of Israel, the Jewish people, to the land of Israel and its fruit. And if you want more information on Tu B'Shvat, you can look it up online and see what the holiday is all about. It's a minor holiday, if you will, but it really has great significance, especially here in the land of Israel. So good to be with you here on this Tu B'Shvat. Again, my name is Josh Hasten. This is Israel Uncensored. Get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten, and on Twitter at Josh Hasten. My guest on today's program, Likud MK Sharren Haskel. She should be joining us after the break. But first, we will get to the news. If you have not seen it yet, a truly amazing video making the rounds there on the internet. Unfortunate, but a truly amazing video from the Hermon in Israel's Golan in the north, the ski resort. You see skiers coming down the mountain there. We have had a lot of snow and precipitation and rain throughout the country, thank God. But here in the video, you see skiers coming down the mountain, and all of a sudden, you see a missile being shot up into the air. That is the Iron Dome. The Israeli Iron Dome intercepting a projectile fired by Syria into an attempted firing of the missile, a surface-to-surface missile, according to the Times of Israel, from Syria into Israel, and the projectile shot down. And it's amazing. You can see that nothing was affected. The ski resort wasn't closed. People kept on skiing. But you see on the video the image of Israel's defensive system in action, shooting down the missile. They're saying that this was an attempt by Syria to retaliate against an earlier strike believed to be by Israel against terror targets in Syria. I've actually seen something like this before. I think I talked about it on the air this past summer. I saw an Israeli, I believe it was a Patriot, shoot down a drone over the Lake of Galilee, the Kinneret. It's truly amazing, the technology and the defense we have. Unfortunately, it has to be deployed. But go check out that video of the rocket being shot down or missile being shot down over the Hermon. And we will have to monitor the situation in the north to see if this is perhaps the beginning of something bigger up on the northern border. Prime Minister Netanyahu visited the country of Chad over the weekend, meeting with President Idris Deby on Sunday, announcing the reestablishment of diplomatic relations between the new countries, reported here by Times of Israel, bringing the number of countries that Israel has formal ties with to a record of 161. So those who say Israel is an isolated country, 161 countries now have relations with the Jewish state of Israel. We are making new inroads into the Muslim world, said Prime Minister Netanyahu. We are being welcomed here respectfully, just as we welcome President Deby with great respect. In Israel, he said, Israel is breaking into the Muslim world. This is the result of a great effort during the last few years. We're making history, and we're turning Israel into a rising world power. That taking place over there in Chad. The news here closer to home. Of course, we've talked a lot about my friend Ari Fold of blessed memory. May God avenge his blood. Over the last several months since his murder here at the Gush Etzion Junction. Well, the IDF the other day on Friday demolished the house, or the apartment of the terrorist. I won't even say his name. The teenager who stabbed and murdered my friend Ari Fold. It took several months until the actual demolition took place. In my opinion, this is the bare minimum that should be done in order to deter future attacks. Again, if you're going to demolish a house, in my opinion, it should be done immediately It shouldn't have to wait 4 months. And again, this was basically the demolition of one floor in a building, from what I understand. But this is a minimum which should be done. The demolition of houses. Has it proven to be a terror deterrent over the years? I don't know. The IDF and the security forces believe it to be, the IDF leadership and security forces believe it to be a terror deterrent. I think much more can be done in order to deter future attacks. At the same time, the Jerusalem Post reports that Israel is to demolish the homes of the other terrorists responsible for the Ofra and the Givat Asaf attacks, those deadly attacks in recent weeks. The IDF announcing on Sunday a demolition order for the home belonging to the family of the terrorists, and these are two relatives, I think perhaps brothers, who were responsible for both of those deadly attacks in January at the Ofra Junction, and then again at Givat Asaf. And we will have to see how long it will actually take for those houses to be demolished. Again, perhaps a minor deterrent, if you want to call it that, but I think a lot more needs to be done. This is a very interesting story. Just shows the true face of anti-Semitism. The J-Post reports that the Malaysian Prime Minister, if you got this story the other day, he decided that he was going to ban Israel's participation, in the World Para-Swimming Championships scheduled to take place in July. And now Malaysia says the ban against Israeli athletes is not anti-Semitism. Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad said in a question and answer session at Oxford University, he said, "A country has a right to keep its borders closed to certain people. That is why borders are there." Speaking in defense of his country's decision not to allow the Israeli swimmers, Paralympic swimmers, to compete. He added, "It's not fair to call me anti-Semitic. They should call other people anti-Semitic. I am not anti-Semitic. The Arabs are all Semitic people." Again, then trying to downplay his hatred of Jews by saying Arabs are Semites as well, and because he likes Arabs, therefore he is not anti-Semitic. However, in October, and I laugh, but it's really sad, in a BBC interview, the Prime Minister described Jews as, quote, hook-nosed. Hook-nosed, yes, that's what he said. During the interview, he said, "If you're going to be truthful, the problem in the Middle East began with the creation of Israel." Of course, then ignoring the millions who have died in inter-Muslim or inter-Arab conflicts in the Middle East. Israel, of course, is the problem. He also said that 4 million, not 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. But yet he claims that he is not an anti-Semite. Hook-nosed Jews and a Holocaust denier, yet he is not an anti-Semite, blaming Israel for all the problems in the Middle East. Switching here to local news, there was another day of violent riots down on the Gaza border this past Friday. 10,000 Arabs clashed with IDF troops in several locations along the Gaza border fence, reports our friend Anna Aronheim from the Jerusalem Post. Burning tires, throwing rocks and hand grenades at soldiers. IDF troops responding with riot dispersal means. And just another Friday, unfortunately, down on the Gaza border. You can thank Hamas for the violence and the attempts to come into Israel, try to infiltrate into our country and infiltrate into our communities. Here's a report reported by Times of Israel. This is actually citing Israel's Hadashot TV news. According to this report, Israel is going to shut UNRWA schools in East Jerusalem. Those are schools run by that agency, which is perpetuating the conflict between Israel and the Arabs. They have been since 1948, holding these pawns, the Arabs, in squalor, and not only those who fled in 1948, but their children and grandchildren, keeping them there, promising that they will have this so-called right of return, and they will return to places like Ashkelon and Haifa and Jaffa, essentially destroy the Jewish state of Israel. So, according to this report, Israeli officials are set to revoke permits for schools in East Jerusalem run by the UN agency for so-called Palestinian refugees. We know that UNRWA is in reality run by either the PLO or Hamas or other terror groups. They preach and they incite to murder against Israelis and against Jews, and it all starts with their education system. So, if this report is accurate and true, it would be a positive step for Israel to shut down the UNRWA schools in Jerusalem, perpetuating this conflict and inciting towards hate against Israel and the Jewish people. So we started the show talking about Tu B'Shvat before we go to break, and then MK Sharren Haskel. The Knesset later today on Monday is to mark the 70th birthday of that institution here, coinciding with Tu B'Shvat, reported by Lav Harkov in the J-Post. The Knesset will celebrate the 70th anniversary of its inaugural meeting on Monday. More than 2,000 students, soldiers, and senior citizens expected to attend the Knesset's annual open house in honor of this being its 70th year. As on every year, the Knesset's birthday falls on Tu B'Shvat, and it's a celebration in conjunction with KKL, JNF. Visitors will be able to plant blue and white flowers to create the number 70 in the Knesset's entrance square. So that is just a brief summary of everything going on in the news here in Israel. And we're going to get to our guest, MK of the Likud Party, Sharon Haskell, after the break. Thanks so much for joining us here on Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. My name is Josh Hasten. Get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten, and on Twitter at Josh Hasten. Short break, and we'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
Join Eve Harrow for a special Tu B'Shvat broadcast for Judaism's Birthday of the Trees as she interviews Rabbi Yonatan Niro. Can religious leadership and Torah study be catalysts to create a better environment?
For humanity to despoil God's earth is an affront to God, and us as religious adherents have an obligation to protect God's creation.
That's a beautiful thing. I know that in Israel, organic farming was actually born in a religious kibbutz, in Kibbutz Eliyahu.
That's Rejuvenation with Eve Harrow, every Sunday on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.
And we are back. Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is the 21st of January, 2019. Hope you're having a wonderful Tu B'Shvat holiday. We certainly are here in the Land of Israel. We're going to go to the phone right now. My next guest, MK Sharren Haskel from the Likud Party. She's been on the program before. She is an up-and-coming star in the Likud Party. Now, as we head towards elections in April, MK Haskell is hoping to be on one of the top slots on the Likud list. I think she can get there with all the wonderful things she's done over the last several years as a member of the Likud and MK. MK Haskell, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and happy Tu B'Shvat to you and to all the listeners.
Happy Tu B'Shvat to you. Let's talk about the campaign trail. I'm sure you're extremely busy. We appreciate you taking the time to do the interview this morning. How are things going on the campaign trail as we head towards the next Knesset elections?
So it's actually going really good. Getting a lot of positive response from many Likud members. I think that most of them are quite worried about the next election because there are so many parties who are popping up. Almost every single day there's a new party that's coming up, and they're quite worried, and so they want to build and to promote the best and the most, the most worthy politicians on the Likud's list, so that we will be able to compete against those, lists and parties who have many celebs, journalists, TV stars, things like that. I think that many of them, from the feedback also that I'm getting from them, are extremely proud of the work that I've done in the past 4 years. I've been working extremely hard to liberate the Israeli economy from so much bureaucracy and regulation. For me, it's really an ideology. A free market is an approach that is not very popular in Israel. It's been criticized a lot, but I've been, holding the fences for the past 4 years. I'm very proud of it, canceling many legislations that make life harder for working families, and making new legislations that will make it easier for them. It goes from the small things like eliminating the faxes. So every government office had to or requested from citizens to send paperwork and documents through fax. When Israel is a startup nation and everybody should be using already emails. So I passed a legislation that requires from all government office to give an alternative of an email address in order to send any kind of documents. That was one of the things. But there's many, even working with farmers who have it extremely difficult in front of the government with so much regulation that they need to send and fulfill, with so much taxes that needs to be paid for almost every action that they're taking. And farmers in Israel are having it really hard, especially in the recent years when we see more and more farmers, dropping their work, going into a new kind of work. Many of them actually moved to many third world countries in Asia and Africa to teach them how to farm. We want them here. We want them creating, for us, it's part of Zionism, working our land, making the best quality food and products. As we know, Israel is really good at that. So I've been working very hard with them in order to help them in many, many fields. Besides that, yeah?
No, please
Sorry?
Go ahead. Continue.
So there's many things, but I think also two of the things that I'm most proud of. One of them is liberating the media market and the media, as Israel had so much regulation and did not, no one was able, for example, to open TV channels. There was only 3 that were allowed. So with my legislation, we were able to free the television market to the point where now many people are able, if they want to, if they choose to open a TV channels. More channels are capable of broadcasting news, and so that's been a huge revolution in Israel. Besides the economy that I'm dealing with in my legislation, I do a lot of work on foreign policy. As a member of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, I've been sent on many delegations and many events or international, conferences to represent Israel. When a lot of the times Israel is being attacked, not just by anti-Israeli organizations or BDS or on campuses, but even in the international community, you can see signs of that as well. And so I've been really proud of the work that I'm doing in the international arena.
My guest is MK Sharren Haskel from the Likud Party, talking about her accomplishments over the last several years, including liberating the media market, foreign policy, and to those who may not understand that law about the fax thing, I mean, it is a huge deal. Here we're living in 2019 for government offices requiring to send a fax and that no longer being the case. It may sound like a small deal, but it's huge to those who have to get paperwork, send paperwork on a daily basis. So it's no small matter. But let me ask you this, turning to the actual Likud party and the upcoming election, why vote Likud? I mean, you have 2 different schools of thought, and it's usually the case, it has been at least since 1992, where Likud lost the election and people blamed those who voted for smaller, perhaps more right-wing, if you want to call them that, parties. So the 2 schools of thought, number one, is to vote for the Likud and vote for a right-wing party that is a mainstream or a popular party. Right now, the polls show Likud has the most votes. And there's another school of thought that says, hey, we can actually help the Likud because they're expected to win by supporting perhaps a smaller party to the right. And that way they could stand up for the Likud if the Likud is pressured, whether it's in the international arena or here locally. What is your thought on those schools of thought?
Well, it's, the Israeli political arena is quite different to almost any other country. Look, in the last elections, we had 34 parties running into the government. 10 of them were elected in, more than 10. And so you understand that there are so many parties. In a normal political kind of atmosphere, you'll be able to create two big parties and maybe a couple of independent ones. One that demand more government involvement, which would mean the left, and one that requests less government involvement in our day-to-day life, in our economy, which would mean right. It's not the case because the Israeli public usually would, love stars and, from the television, from the military arena, from the business community. And so every single individual thinks that and wants to lead the party. Not just lead the party, but lead the country as a prime minister. And so instead of having two choices for the public to choose from, maybe 3 or 4, you have about 7 or 8 people who are running to be prime minister, which makes it very difficult, right. Makes it very unstable as well later on for our political, governing. Look on the election before the last one, like 2 elections ago. Bennett had made a pact with Yair Lapid from the center, so more extreme right and center joined together in order to manipulate the Prime Minister Netanyahu's decision about who should or shouldn't sit in the government. These things will happen again, probably, if the public continue to choose small parties, choose to divide their votes between 3 mandates here, 5 mandates there. It makes it much harder to govern and to be a stable government for quite a few years.
I understand. Let me ask you this then. There are those who are concerned, and I want to talk about your goals for the future, specifically in regard. A lot of our listeners are very big proponents of communities in Judea and Samaria, and a lot of them have been concerned over the last several years. We saw the demolition of homes in Ofra, homes in Netiv Avot, and other places as well. You, as an MK Haskell, what will you do? And we could talk about a million different issues today, and we can go on all day. I know your time is short, but what would you tell the voters today in terms of your positions vis-a-vis the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria and their future, with this American peace plan hanging over our heads, with pressure from the Tzipi Livnis out there who are calling for another so-called disengagement, setting up a Palestinian state? What would you say to the voters who are very much concerned about the future of Jewish life in Judea and Samaria?
So I have to say, because I was asked an interesting question just about 2 weeks ago on television, asking what is one of the things that I most regret in the last Knesset. And I have to say that it really, it's aching, the fact that under our government, we have, evacuated Amona and Netiv Avot. It's heartbreaking, and I hope we never have to do it again. This is why we passed the legislation, the Chok HaHasdara, it's called, right. To make sure that these kind of evacuation wouldn't happen again. But you know what? At the same time, I'm really proud that we managed to pass it. It wasn't easy. And with everything that had happened now, we are starting to give more and more permanent permits for those towns to continue and develop, to make sure that they have a legal and grounded future in Judea and Samaria, and not just those towns that were on a question mark, but also towns who never, for years they've tried to continue and develop and make extensions, and we were able to approve that. I mean, just a couple of months ago, we actually approved to double the Jewish town of Hebron, which is unbelievable. And I'm extremely proud of it. I think that the more mandates that the Likud will receive to make sure that we can build one party, maybe with one extra party in it, that will make a stable future for us to make the right decisions as well. On the other hand, for the past 2 years, I've been trying to push a bill. I think that this is going to be one of our biggest mistakes that we didn't promote that bill, because in the atmosphere that we've had for the past 3 years with a very friendly American government, with the most, patriotic government that we've had in years, in the coalition as well. I think that we were able, and that's what I was trying to push for, to put the Israeli legislation in the areas of the Jordan Valley and the north of the Dead Sea. Most of the lands that are considered Area C, that are always being debated by anti-Israeli organizations, most of the Area C lands are in those areas. It's a huge area. Mm-hmm. And so that will already reduce one of the constant remarks that they are putting about Judea and Samaria as well. I think that that would also could have been a first good step into show them that the best way to create stability, to create coexistence, is to apply the Israeli law, legislation, and government on those areas. And I think that would have been a great pilot to start with. I think that we would have got the backup of the, not complete backup of the international community, but something that would make sense, because everybody understands the need, the security need of Israel to be in the Jordan Valley. And I think that even, left-wing voices would have voted in favor of a legislation like that. I think there would have been a consensus about it. I think we were able to pass a legislation like that. I think that in the next 4 years, we're going to regret that we didn't. I was pushing it extremely hard in front of the Prime Minister, in front of the chairman of the coalition. Unfortunately, I got sort of pushed back and put on hold with this legislation, but I can promise you that in the next Knesset, this is one of the first things that I'm going to push forward.
That definitely is a step in the right direction, applying Israeli sovereignty over the Jordan Valley area, the Dead Sea area. There have been talks about the Malaysian area as well. Olive area, sea, absolutely. And I definitely want to see that progress as the years go on. I believe in that wholeheartedly. We have to apply sovereignty. Just last question before we let you go. As I said before, a rising star in the Likud, let's say already a star in the Likud. If the Likud gets enough mandates and is elected into the next Knesset, which minister position, if it was offered to you, would you be interested in taking if that was on the table? Again, I'm speculating here. I don't have any inside information. If the Prime Minister said, Sharon, I would like you to become...
She's a minister. Oh, that would be a dream.
What would you like?
True. And the first ministry that I would ask for would be the agricultural ministry. There is so much to do there in order to liberate the market, in order to assist farmers to be able to stand on both their feet, in order to assist also with animal cruelty. A lot of things that needs to be cleaned out in this office and needs to be reconstructed. And I believe I'm brave enough to make those huge changes that should have been done probably 20 years ago.
Well, I am actually from, I don't know if you know this, I'm from the state of Indiana, where it is farm country out there in the U.S. So while I was not a farmer myself, didn't come from a family of farmers, I know a little bit about the farming industry, and I know some of the behind the scenes.
How much they struggle.
Yeah, how they struggle. But I actually, on the other side, I know how behind the scenes, how actually Israeli technologies are being used in the States, and there are matches being made to pair up some of these Israeli agri-tech companies with companies in the U.S., including the state of Indiana, which are doing work together in order to advance agriculture in both countries. So I'm going to remember this conversation if that comes to be, and you become the agriculture minister, because I'm going to give you a call, because we're going to make some shiduchim, connections, as they say, in order to improve life here in Israel.
I completely agree with you that agriculture is a great platform for cooperation, international cooperation between Israel and the United States, and also many other countries who are being perceived as enemies of Israel as well.
MK Sharren Haskel, I know you're extremely busy heading towards elections. We're going to let you go, but I really want to say thank you for your time this morning. I want to wish you the best of luck on the campaign trail. And
thanks a lot.
And perhaps there's still some time between now and the election, so maybe as we get closer, we will, please God, talk again soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks so much.
Have a great day.
Have a great day, and Tu B'Shvat Sameach. That is going to do it. That is going to do it for today's show. My name is Josh Hasten. This is Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. If you missed any part of the show, go back and check it out. Several developments over the last several hours. Just now making the news. Israel attacking, supposedly attacking more sites, Iranian sites in Syria. In addition, this is also news relevant to Israel. The New England Patriots are going back to the Super Bowl. And why is that news? That is news because Robert Kraft is a great supporter of the state of Israel. Those who know me know I'm a fan of the Indianapolis Colts, but I'm also a big fan of Robert Kraft. It was just announced that he will be receiving the Genesis Prize this spring. And his team's going back to the Super Bowl. So he's a big supporter of Israel, so that's good news, because when the Patriots do well, Israel benefits, whether you like the team or not. That's going to do it for today. Get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com, on Facebook, Joshua Hasten, and on Twitter at Josh Hasten. Shout out to my main man, Benjamin Bresky, for all the work he does here at the Land of Israel Network, making sure that these audio recordings get up, as well as Tabitha Epstein. Without them, there would be no sound, folks. This wouldn't be happening. Big shout out to all the other hosts here on the Land of Israel Network. My name is Josh Hasten. Everybody out there, have a wonderful week. Happy Tu B'Shvat for everyone out there celebrating. Most importantly, between now and when we talk again next Monday, please God, everyone out there in the wonderful world of ours, be safe. Shalom, shalom from Jerusalem, the capital of Israel and the capital of the Jewish people.
Decision, says Paul Pillich, is a risk rooted in the courage of being free. Now, I'm feeling pretty free right now, and I've got the courage to take some risks because I've made a decision. This is the last episode of Season 2. I'm Rav Mike Foyer, and this is The Jewish Story.
Join Rav Mike Foyer for the best Jewish history podcast, The Jewish Story, on the Land of Israel Network at the